Hi guys, welcome to week 4 of Comp 1. We have a lot to go over this week, so please look very carefully at all of the links that I've provided and the assignment, and be sure that you've got everything kind of under control. So this week we're going to learn a new kind of writing convention and also kind of put together everything that we've learned thus far. And you're going to start your first kind of major essay assignment and do also another short writing assignment in the meantime. So we're going to talk about gender this week, the readings that you will do, which are outlined in the assignment link and also in the discussion forum. You'll be doing some readings and watching a short film. Again, this one is just 30 minutes long, looking at gender kind of norms and expectations in our culture. So this kind of lends itself well to talking about comparing and contrasting, which is something I'm sure you're familiar with, kind of using that as a way to understand and organize information. To compare is to look at how things are similar, and to contrast is to look at how things are different. So think about the Venn diagram when you imagine this. And when we talk about expectations of and kind of cultural norms of men and women and masculinity and femininity in American culture, that's going to be kind of the focus of looking at comparative analysis and writing your first argument persuasion paper while using description that we've talked about, being very specific and giving specific details and description, and argument persuasion, so using the rhetorical appeals to make your point. So the writing assignment itself, you have 3 different prompts to choose from, and you're going to be looking at either how a specific idea is marketed differently toward men and women. So parenthood, how is motherhood versus fatherhood marketed in media? So think about sitcoms, commercials, anything that might kind of come to mind. Sex and sexuality, how is that different in terms of how it's marketed toward men and women or boys and girls? There are a lot of different things that you can do in terms of social constructs and what are the expectations culturally of men and women. Another choice is to look at a specific product and how it's marketed differently toward men and women. So the example of, let's see, Dove shampoo or body wash, how it makes women feel good about themselves, and versus the Old Spice ads, don't you wish that your man was like me? So looking at how products are marketed differently toward men and women. Or the third choice is to look at how men and women themselves are marketed differently. Actors and actresses, models, politicians. How are female politicians talked about, written about, marketed differently than male politicians? There's so much you can do with any one of these prompts. So your challenge first is to make observations, kind of look around, think about news coverage, commercials, sitcoms, films. The possibilities are pretty endless here. And then start to maybe even make a Venn diagram yourself. How are men and women presented differently? What are the expectations of men and women? And then a really important step of this process is you need to figure out what that means. So you're not just presenting facts and observations in your essay. You are giving them meaning and making an argument and proving some kind of point, which is your thesis, your claim, your argument about this information. What does it mean? What does it tell us about being a man or woman in America? And what does that mean? How is that harmful? How is that beneficial? You're making some kind of argument about the information that you have gathered. If you think about Killing Us Softly, Jean Kilbourne is basically reading a research essay, making an argument, and she has illustrations to illustrate her argument, but she's making a very clear argument. And by looking at mostly women in media, but also men and depictions of them and what that means. She's going a step further, going beyond surface, going beyond the superficial to answer the question, what does this mean, and is this harmful, and is it beneficial? What does this tell us about society? So keep going with that. Choose something that interests you. I think sometimes students think, oh, deodorant sounds easy, so I'll write about that. Don't go just with what sounds easy, because that won't compel you to think critically and write compellingly. Choose something that really interests you. And again, that can be male and female politicians. There have been a lot of examples of that in the last couple of years if you follow politics, how men and women are treated differently in the media. Products, diet advertisements, weight loss advertisements, how it's different for men and women, birth control, just everything is marketed to us. So think about us as consumers and, again, what that means culturally. So make a compelling argument. And do keep in mind, there are interesting conversations you could have about religion in this topic, and that you could perhaps weave into your essay. That would be a topic itself, perhaps, how religion treats men and women differently. But in academic argument, we can't use personal faith to support our point. Faith isn't something that can really be argued academically. And if you think about it, if your argument essay, if the basis of it is that your religion says so, it's hard to find the purpose to need to write a research essay about that. So that's explained more in depth in your Little Brown Handbook about why we can't use belief systems to construct an argument. But that doesn't mean that religion is off limits or that you can't talk about religion in the confines of academic argument. So if that's something that you wonder about or are wanting to use somehow, just shoot me an email and we can kind of troubleshoot that. So do your readings, the gender readings, watch the video, and I've also posted PowerPoints about citation, doing citation properly, citing your sources, and utilizing in-text citation. So please go over those slides carefully and become familiar with your Little Brown Handbook, where those things are, the sections in your Little Brown Handbook that outline what your works cited page should look like, what kind of sources you might be using, and how to put them together. You'll really need to use that a lot in your comp career and really in any college class that you have to use other sources. So start getting familiar with first the concept of why do we cite sources? And we do it for very practical reasons. So your reader can know where you got information and do more research, him or herself, to find out more about that source, about your argument. Citation, again, serves a very practical purpose. So go over those rules. Then also look at the resources I provided about doing comparative analysis, which you'll be kind of practicing that in part with this essay. You may just contrast in this essay. You may mostly contrast and just compare a little bit or vice versa. That's fine. The general idea is that you are examining how you're examining the differences and giving meaning to that. So again, it might just be contrasting, and that's fine, but the same rules apply. There are two ways to organize a comparative analysis, either point by point, where in each paragraph you're tackling both topics that you're looking at, both things that you're comparing, or working one side at a time, spending an entire paragraph on one side of the issue, spending another entire paragraph on something else. So depending on your essay, one of those organizational styles will work better, and the handout goes more in depth with that. Your short writing assignment that you need to do this week is I've provided 2 suffrage speeches from the mid to late 1800s, and I want you to go through them and kind of examine and identify ethos, pathos, and logos appeal. And then you'll write a brief 1 to 2 page analytical brief essay about those 2 suffrage speeches, keeping in mind the rhetorical triangle, the speaker, the subject, and the audience, because they're very different for those 2 speeches, and also the rhetorical appeals of ethos, pathos, and logos. So I ask you to briefly research those 2 speakers and those speeches that they gave. Avoid Wikipedia or use Wikipedia to find better sources. Use the library's database. Find good sources. You don't have to do extensive research, but the fact that Sojourner Truth was a Black woman, a freed slave, and she gave that speech to an audience of mostly sympathetic white women and men who were for voting rights for women. And Susan B. Anthony was giving her speech when she was on trial, and she was arrested and fined for trying to cast a vote. So, and she was kind of a well-to-do white woman defending herself in court. So think about those 2 different rhetorical situations and how that changes their writing. They're speaking, but we're looking at it as text. So again, keep thinking about these rhetorical appeals, the rhetorical situation, and that should also inform your larger essay that you're working on. The idea that advertisements, media in general, is meant to get us to believe things, to buy things, to want to be a certain way, and that's all rhetoric, that's all persuasion. So everything is kind of coming to a head this semester, or this week in the middle of the semester. Hopefully you're seeing all of these connections, how all of this is working together in terms of composition and rhetoric, and have fun with it. Be thinking a lot and exploring ideas, and let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.